I was given 10 minutes to decide if I wanted to leave the country on a raft or stay in a country of repression. I decided to go on a raft. I was willing to risk my life to have freedom because everything is freedom. If you got no freedom, you got nothing. If you got no freedom, you cannot choose what you do, you cannot choose what you learn. So I decided to risk my life and go on the raft. But I only had 10 minutes to decide, but the universe was listening. I was given 10 minutes to decide to get on a raft or not, to cross the ocean, to risk everything for a better life, freedom, and opportunity. My name is Sal, and this is my story. I'm going to tell you my story the way I remember it, and also I'm going to tell you my story with my accent. So remember, if you don't like my accent, I'm sorry about that. I'm trying my best. I was born in Cuba in 1971. I'm 55 years old. I decided to share my story with you so that you know exactly how things go from my perspective. I was born in 1971. I grew up in Cuba under communism, under socialism, and I came in 1994, September 94. I left Cuba on a raft. My story is pretty crazy because I've been always preparing unconsciously to leave the country. I've always wanted it to come since I was a little kid. I always wanted it to travel. I always wanted it to explore new lands and new world. But somehow, unconsciously, I was doing things in the background. When I became an adult, a teenager adult, I started. I knew I had this feeling that I was gonna love, that I was gonna leave. I didn't know how. I didn't know when I was gonna leave, but I knew I had to get ready. So I studied English. I started studying English. I also studied Italian because I figure out that if I get ready and I learn as many languages as I could, right? If I get if I get as much knowledge as I can, I will be ready for the moment. I will be given an opportunity by the universe of God. I didn't know this was going to happen, but that was my understanding. So I continued doing it. I practice my English with American tourists that will go to the island, with Italian tourists that will go to the island, and I will be a tourist guide. I did this for 1 year, and then by the by the September of 2009 of 1994, I was completely surprised. I went to my uncle's house, and I got there, and then he just came back from like outside working, and something was going on, and he set me down he set me down on the sofa and said, "Listen, we're leaving in 10 minutes. You got 10 minutes to decide. We are going on a raft that we made out of 55 oil drums, and we've been working in secret for a month. Obviously, you haven't you're coming here by coincidence, and I want to give you the opportunity, but if something goes wrong with the raft or something, you have to stay because you haven't contributed." And I said, "Not a problem." I didn't have I say yes before I even thought about it because this was the moment I was waiting for. This is my door. This was my opportunity. So I didn't even think about it. I knew I was going to make it, and something inside of me told me, yes, this is the moment. So I say yes. So he goes, "Well, do a little note for your mom. You cannot tell anybody anything. It's going to be in secret. We cannot tell anybody. So write it down, a note for your parents, and the neighbor will give it to them tomorrow." So he told me, "Get ready. This is your clothes." I was just wearing my t-shirt. I was just wearing a t-shirt, some shorts, and some tennis shoes. That's what I had. So we go to the place where, I'm all worried about it. I'm not worried about it because I know things are gonna go through. So we just jump in the car and go to the place where the person that was making the homemade propeller and where they were setting up the raft, and it was in the countryside, in Cuba countryside, so Havana countryside. So we go there, and then we're putting the raft on top of the truck, 1958 Chevy truck. We put the raft there, and then the guy, one of Then the guy who made the homemade propeller, because the raft was 55 oil drums, um, to put together like a catamaran, right? With two in the front, pointy, and then four on each side. And in the middle, it had like aluminum tubes and benches, wood benches on top of those, so that we don't go through. And it was an engine from the engine was from an old pump, a four-cylinder oil pump, and then they adapted a transmission from a 1964 um, Russian Jeep, and then a homemade propeller. And it was in the center. So, and we had gas, and we had like, I mean, they had like 10 gallons of gas in jugs, so that the idea was to make it to the USA. Back in those times, that was in 1994 September. The Cubans were coming on rafts. The government just said, we're not gonna do anything to you. You just can leave if you want to. There was a special period, and things were desperate, and people were um, doing riots on the street, and getting complicated. So um, the Cuban government decided to let people go, and they did an announcement: we're not gonna stop you. We're not gonna put you in jail. If you want to go, just go. We don't want you here. So whoever had money at the time, whoever had a little bit of money, because even making a route was a difficult thing at those times. So um, so so we put the raft on top of that truck, and then the guy who made the propeller goes, "Hey guys, you know what? I'm not leaving. I'm staying because I don't want to leave my family behind." So inside of me, I was like, "That's my ticket right there." So the universe is working towards me. It's saying, "You going?" You know. So I was excited about it. So we go inside on top of the truck, and everybody's like, on the street, we're going on the street, and we jump on the back of the truck, and on the street, everybody was saying bye to us, and it was great. And everyone was like, "Hey, good luck. Hey, take care of yourself. God bless. Good luck, guys. I hope you make it." And then it was about a 30-minute ride. So when we get to the coast, we put the raft we take it down from the truck, and we put the raft on top of in the ocean, actually, on the shore. And this was in Havana, in the coast of Havana. I would say a little bit, no, a little bit south. See, north, yeah, south of Havana, close to a place where people come, like a nautical. The nautical. I don't know if nobody knows this, but this, like, close to the Marianao Beach. That's the area there. And then we put a route there, and then one guy is like, "Hey, you guys are not gonna test that engine to see if it works?" So my uncle goes, "No, we're gonna test this in the ocean. We're not gonna test anything. We're just gonna go." you know this was like a decision, because at that point, if people were not like really paying attention, they can even hijack your raft. That's how bad it was, because everybody was desperate to leave. So everybody goes in. Then I wait for the last minute, because I was kind of pretty much the lucky guy there. I just got in at the last minute. So I'm waiting for everybody to go in. I said, "Gentlemen, I don't want to." So my aunt said, "Sabi, come on, let's go. You're ready. Everybody's in." So I jump in. So we are, I'm so excited. We're not in, like, maybe we're going like maybe 5 miles, 5 miles an hour. I'll say, probably my first time, guys, on a raft. My first time on anything that floats. In Cuba, nobody has boats, so whoever has a boat is like you have to inherit it from before, not like it's not something you can get or buy or anything like that. So it was my first time on a boat. It was my first time, everything on this situation. So we just go, and then we were cruising about 5 miles an hour, I'll say. And about 3 o'clock in the morning, somebody was trying to adjust and move, and they touched the cable that goes from the battery to the engine. One cable there, and then everything stops. The engine stops in the middle of the ocean. I think we were about maybe 20 miles away from the U.S., from the USA coast. We already have passed international waters and everything. So it's 3 o'clock in the morning. The whole engine start. We tried to put it back again. We tried to start the engine one more time, but the battery was too old. It was an old battery. There is no battery factories in Cuba, so whatever you can get on those times was what you can get. And everything was taking parts from here and there. I um so I started vomiting, obviously, because I never been. The ocean. The waves were calm. The ocean was calm on that day. It was really dark. It was a really dark night, but it was a very calm night. Um, our so I started vomiting, and then they tried to restart the engine. It won't start again. So my uncle decides to throw everything aboard. Let's throw the engine. Let's throw the gas. They had, thankfully, he thought ahead, thinking that things could go wrong. So we had rows. So he had some rows there. So we start. I said, "Hey, I'm on a row." So I start rowing, but I don't know how to row. Never rowed before in my life. So it was like nobody knew how to row. We were not going. We were not advancing much. Plus the waves were like big. Like big waves. But it was like waves that are different, because in the ocean, when you're in the middle of the ocean, the waves are different than on the beach. The waves on the ocean are like mountains, like hills, like the hills of Kentucky, I'll say. It's like you can see when you. And at that night we could also hear all the people, all the rafters away. In fact, there was a rafter that told us they needed help. They were actually calling for help, but we couldn't even see what they were. We can hear them, but we couldn't see them. So now we start rowing, we start rowing, and I didn't know how to row. So my uncle goes, in the morning, everybody's gonna have a crash course in rowing here, because everybody's gonna have to pitch in. Um, let me tell you about the raft. Was like I said, 13 people, including me, actually including me, and then there were about four women, and the rest were men. So, but like me, I guarantee you that most of the people there had never been on a boat before. So we started rowing. Then somebody takes my place. I take a little break, fall asleep for like a couple of hours, 3 hours. I wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning. I get some water. My aunt had prepared um, fried pork for the trip, because it doesn't get bad. They plan to be in the ocean for 3 nights at least. Um, so they put pork, they put crackers, and they put a lot of water. They had like maybe 5 gallons of water just for the journey. We got something to eat, and then you know what? I have a lot of faith, and I knew I was gonna make it. I never had any fear when it comes to that. Something told me that I was gonna make it. I had that sense. So at 5 o'clock in the morning, I told God, "Hey God, please send the Coast Guard to us. Send them to them. Send them to us. Help us make it. Help us make it to the U.S. Coast Guard." Guys, I knew I was not gonna make it to the USA. That was my uncle's plan. He wanted it to make it to the USA, but I've been listening to Radio Marti uh, for when the problem started, because this exodus, this exodus started around June, July. Um, so 30,000, about 35,000 Cubans left the island on those times, in those 2 months. And I knew that Clinton said that nobody was going to go through on those dates. There's no raft was going to go through, and we were going to be sent to Guantanamo indeterminate, uh, undeterminate, permanently. Undetermined, he said. His words were undeterminately, like there was no date. So I knew that they were gonna take us to Guantanamo Bay. It was fine to me, because I knew I know that the American law. I kind of know a little bit about how the American politics move, because I've been listening to the news and Radio Marti for years, since I was a teenager. So I know how they act. I know how they value freedom. So they're not gonna let us be on on an on a base for too long. Let's say I was prepared to be there for 2 3 years. Who cares? The main thing was to leave that dictatorship and that lack of freedom. So whatever it took, I could have drawn on the ocean. It was worth it. I would have done it again and again and again. So about 5 o'clock I pray, and then guys, what I just pray with faith. I look at the stars. That's my way of praying. I always look at the star at night, and then if I am outside, I try to connect with the universe. So the universe listens to me. It listens all the time, believe it or not. Even though sometimes we think it doesn't need listen, it does listen, and the universe listens a lot to us when we do things with faith and we ask with faith, and we ask specific questions. So I tell them, send the Coast Guard to us, please. And exactly around 9 a.m., we see a big boat coming towards us. Everybody start panicking. Oh, let me go back a real. When the engine stops, people start panicking on the raft, and they want to go back. Some of them want to go back. My uncle and I said, nobody's going back. Nobody's going back. We're not going back. We're going forward. We're almost there. And I explained to them, listen, I've been listening to the radio. The Coast Guard are around here. The U.S. Coast Guard is 12 miles from the coast of Cuba. They are in international waters. So it's a matter of time. They're going to find us right away. Let's keep going. So we did. So now, like I said, 9 o'clock in the morning, a, a big boat is coming towards us. Everybody, some people start panicking. Oh, it's the Cuban Coast Guard. And I go, no, the Cuban Coast Guard is not going to come here to get us. They don't want us back. It's the Americans. They're coming to rescue us. Plus, there was Manos a Rescate, the planes that they're trying to get Castro now because he shot one of those. Those people were going around during the daytime for free because those people were working for free. They were volunteers trying to rescue the rafters that were in the ocean so that they don't die. They give them guidance. A lot of people owe their lives to those hermanos al rescate and those Cubans. So we get rescued by this U.S. Coast Guard, and they said leave everything on the raft. We're gonna give you everything you need. The people in the raft started throwing away like some machetes and some weapons, knives. I don't know why they had like weapons, but I guess they were afraid that somebody was gonna hijack them or take the raft in the middle of the ocean, or panic. People panic all the time, so they throw away the whatever weapon they have, which in this case was a couple of machetes and knives. And it was funny after I think about it, years later, I'm like, why would they have that? But anyways, so we get into the U.S. Coast Guard. It was a medium-sized ship, like a fast speed boat. They gave us. There were about 30 people on the boat already on that little boat. They gave us white suits. They told us to put that on top of our clothes, and we go on that in that little speedboat, and then they transfer us to a big destroyer that was a little bit more farther down. That destroyer carried about 3,000 Cubans, so they put us there, and then we were coasting the Cuban coast all the way. We spent 3 days on that destroyer. Excuse me. We spent 3 days on that destroyer, and then we were they gave us water, and they gave us some Quakers, cereal, and that's what we had breakfast on one meal a day, so that we don't go to the bathroom that much. Imagine, guys, and I understand this. We had three. There was 3 people, 3,000 people on that destroyer, and there was probably like maybe a couple. Maybe 5 bathrooms. I don't know how big these things are, how many bathrooms there were there, but I know that there's a lot of bathrooms for 3,000 people. There was not a lot, so they didn't give us a lot of food. They only give us one meal a day plus water, all the water we can have. And then we spent 3 days, and then we went all the way back to Guantanamo Bay. So when we got to Guantanamo Bay, they put us in buses. Man, I remember when I got there to the base, it was just crazy. People were throwing us MREs at us. They were throwing us the beans, the beans bags. The bean bags were like brown beans, and then or pinto beans. And I remember these pinto beans never tasted so good in my life. I mean, they were throwing these things at us, and then we were eating them and then taking them. So this was my journey. We stayed there for 6 months in Guantanamo Bay. In Guantanamo Bay, I got transferred to two camps. The first camp, there was a kilo. Some Cubans try to make some kind of strike, stupid strike. I think I now I believe that some people who were involved with the government, they tried to make a strike there to ruin everything for everybody else. So they started like burning things. They broke the fence. They started stealing food, doing stupid things that needed, because the Americans, when we got there, they give us a bucket with every essential you needed, and they give you a tent, a cat, like a cat, those army cats to sleep on it, and you wore in a tent. The tent fitted about 15 people. The tent, you can be there and sleep there. So we get to Guantanamo Bay, and then they put us in this camp that's called Kilo, and then my journey in Guantanamo Bay starts there. Watch the next video where I speak about my journey in Guantanamo Bay as a refugee, everything that happened there, and everything I did in my journey. I see you next time.